Hello everyone, this is Mr. Jackson, and today we are going to be moving forward yet again in our Concept 1 over the nervous system. We're going into Part 4, where I'm going to be further breaking down the other initial major division of our nervous system, which is your peripheral nervous system. In Part 3, we talked all about the central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, and now we're going to be focusing more on your cranial and spinal nerves and how those are contributing overall to our nervous system function and how that is going to be further divided. So we're going to go into, we're going to look into how the peripheral nervous system is defined, its initial divisions, and then we might even get a little bit deeper here in Part 4, but let's get right into it. All right, I'm going to move myself up here. So there are two major subdivisions of the peripheral nervous system that help get a sense of what it does. Okay. Now on the left here, you have your sensory or afferent division. This is going to be made up of your sensory nerve fibers. This is all about receiving information to send to your central nervous system, your brain, your spinal cord. Okay, so this is all about having a way of sensing our internal and external environments and delivering that information. What's relevant will be utilized. Okay, so you do have somatic sensory fibers. We'll go into somatic in a future part here very, very soon as to what that means. But we got somatic sensory fibers that are responsible for carrying information from the skin, from your skeletal muscles, from your joints. And then more on the visceral side, you have visceral sensory fibers that carry info from those internal visceral organs. Okay, so those can be further subdivided into what kinds of input or sensations we have, both the somatic and the visceral. On the other side, the other big division of the peripheral nervous system, it's not just what we sense or what can we receive. It's also about the motor division or the efferent, and this uses motor nerve fibers to send out information. And this is, again, coming from the central nervous system. That's the control center. That's the integration center, the decision-making portion. And so the motor division is all about sending out information from the brain or the spinal cord to our effector sites, to where the organs that are going to actually make a change to have an effect, to maintain homeostasis. That's what we're all about. So they are, for example, this will send information from the brain to effector organs like muscles. Those muscles will then contract. It could also send to glands that hold our different types of hormones, and they'll secrete those hormones. This is all about just a way in which your peripheral nervous system can deliver the decision from the central nervous system in order to have the effect we need. Now, we are going to go ahead and take one step down in our organization chart as well, and we're going to finish by addressing this portion over here to further define what's happening within that motor division. Again, at this point, we are sending information that was a decision from the central nervous system. We're sending that somewhere in the body to have an effect. Okay? Now, two parts of that motor division. You've got the somatic, which we're now going to define, and the autonomic. Okay? Now, somatic nervous system utilizes somatic motor nerves. And these are responsible for conducting impulses from your central nervous system specifically to your skeletal muscles. So when you think somatic, think skeletal muscles. Okay? And this is ultimately going to control voluntary movement. Sorry, I said that backwards. So your somatic, whenever you think of somatic nervous system, these are going to specifically be the effects that are under your voluntary control. Okay, so think muscles, right? So as example, right now, I can choose to flex my elbow using my skeletal muscles, namely my bicep. That's under my voluntary control. I have my motor division of the peripheral nervous system, specifically the somatic nervous system, in order to think for that. Okay. Now on the other side of that, we'll save this for the next part, for part 5, but you also have the autonomic. It sounds a lot like automatic. You can think of it like that, right? Autonomic is your visceral motor nerve fibers. These conduct impulses from your CNS, but these aren't going to something under your voluntary control. These are going to things like your smooth muscles, your cardiac muscles, and all of your glands as a part of your hormonal endocrine system. We're going to actually cover that in part 3. So these are all about controlling your involuntary movements. Okay, so again, these are the involuntary types of muscle and your glands. So movements of the heart, so your heart beating, your lungs expanding and contracting, right? So being able to breathe, to inhale and exhale. Your stomach, moving things along, the contractions within your stomach so that we move things through as we digest the food we eat. Basically, anywhere where there's cardiac or smooth muscle, you have your autonomic, kind of like automatic, involuntary, don't have to think about it. You have your autonomic nervous system to think. So let's go a little bit more into detail real quick into our somatic nervous system. Again, at this point, we've dived down into the peripheral, the motor division, and now we're here at the somatic. So that's where we're at right now. Now, with your somatic nervous system, you have somatic nerve fibers that innervate your skeletal muscles, and these help to control voluntary movement. Okay, voluntary movement under your control. You choose when this happens. Okay, now your neuron, you see this down here, the neuron cell body is going to start in the central nervous system. So the cell body and where these sensory portions, these dendrites are, those actually exist in the central nervous system. And it's the axons that extend all the way from that central nervous system to the skeletal muscle that it affects. Okay, so this cell body and the dendrite portion, that is within your central nervous system, and this long axon is your part of the peripheral delivering to the skeletal muscle. Okay, so you do have the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. That is going to be released here at these axon terminals in order to actually stimulate contractions in the muscle that they terminate on. Okay, so in this case, the effector organs are your skeletal muscles. They're under voluntary control. You choose when to actively engage these, and acetylcholine is that neurotransmitter that helps to get it done. And then I believe this is the last one for this part. It is. Also, as a part of your somatic nervous system, we do also have nerve impulses being sent down the neuron's axon, like we said. So those impulses sent down the axon to what we call this neuromuscular junction. Neuro meaning the neuron, muscular meaning the muscle, junction where the two join. So the neuromuscular junction. You have acetylcholine, again ACH. You see these little balls of ACH here at the end, here in that synapse. And here in that synaptic cleft, that little space where the two actually meet in that neuromuscular junction, you have a release of this neurotransmitter, this chemical. And this is what's going to ultimately be taken up by your muscle cells, and it's going to create for stimulation. This acetylcholine binds to specific receptors that you have here on that skeletal muscle, and this is going to transmit the acetylcholine and the AP to initiate the action potential. Sorry, should probably say what that means. It's going to transmit the action potential created by that ACH in order to initiate contraction of your muscle. Okay, so this is all about that motor or efferent division, specifically somatic nervous system under your control. All things skeletal muscle is what we've covered here, and we will call it quits for this part, and we'll see you again for part 5, where we break down the other side of that, which is your autonomic nervous system.